In this video, we're going to be looking at the terrain editor. The terrain editor is a great way to add detailed and realistic terrain to your game. So you can see here I have this part. This is the base plate, and I've just made it into grass. And this might get the job done for some games, but if you want more detailed and realistic terrain with different kinds of elevations and things like that, then that's where the terrain editor will come in. You can open the terrain editor with this button right here in the home tab, or in the view tab with the terrain editor button right here. There's also some terrain properties in the workspace you can modify right here, but I'll be going over that more later. So opening the terrain editor here, there's a few options right away. Looking in the Create tab, I'll start with the Import option. So this will let you generate a terrain based on two images. The first image is what's called a height map, and this is going to define the elevation and height of the terrain. And the second one is a color map, and this is going to define what kind of material the terrain is going to have. I've already made both of them here. So this is going to be my color map. And this green area is going to be the grass. This blue is going to be water. And then this very light gray, almost white color is going to be snow. They don't have to be exactly this color. As long as it's roughly the right color, then Roblox Studio should be able to figure out what you're trying to make. With the snow, though, I found that if you use a pure white color, then it doesn't generate it correctly. So just make sure it's not completely white, just kind of a very bright color like this. And then here's the height map I'm going to be using. The black area here is going to be the lowest part of the terrain. So this will be completely flat. And then the whiter areas here are going to be hills and mountains. So that's how it works. The darker area will be lower in elevation, and then the brighter area will be higher. So with those images in mind, I'm going to be generating this terrain here. You can also set the size and position of the terrain. For the size, it works best if you use a size proportional to the image. In this case, my image is 800 by 600. And you can see here, if it's not a proportional size, it'll just tell you right here. And so this box is going to be the terrain that's generated. Then I'll just increase the Y size, because this would make a very flat terrain if I just left it like this. Also, one other thing to keep in mind is that terrain generally uses more performance on the computer than a part would. So if you have too large of a terrain, then your game could lag. I found the water especially uses a lot of resources. But generally it's pretty negligible unless you just have a giant world. And then I'll just go ahead and make this in the origin point so it's centered. I'll just raise it up a bit though so it's not going below the base plate. And you can see it's snapping to something called a voxel. The voxel is just the unit of measurement that the terrain uses. So instead of the studs, it will snap to voxels. And then if I uncheck that, then you can see when I scale it, it's using the decimal places in there. But then if I check this, then it scales it based on the voxel, which is a unit of 4. So this number will always be a multiplier of 4. And then the default material here, I'm not too sure what this does because I tried changing it and generating, but I haven't noticed any difference when I change it, so I'm not too sure what this is for. But now you can see I'm going to go ahead and pick the import button, and it's going to generate this terrain now. And you can see it looks pretty close to the reference images. There's some hills down here and some mountains over there with snow and the river going through just like that, just like the image looked. So here's the reference image again. And then with this button, you can clear the terrain. So I'm going to go ahead and just clear it. And then I'll show you that I'm going to pick this pavement texture and I'm going to generate it again. And you can see it looks exactly the same. So I'm not too sure what this is supposed to be doing, but I haven't noticed it doing anything. So now I'm going to go ahead and just clear this terrain and go over the generate option. So the generate option is if you want to generate terrain without a reference image. It still uses a size and position value, just like the import option. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just make this, I want it as big as the base plate, so I'm going to go back to Explorer and just see how big the base plate is. It's 2048, so I'm going to make this also 2048. So now it should just fill up the base plate entirely. Okay, and then one other new option you can set here is the biomes. So if you ever played like Minecraft or something like that, then you know how it can go from different kinds of environments. So it could go from like a snowy area to a desert or a river or ocean into mountains and things like that. So that's what the biomes is for. You can use all of them or you can just use one of them, but you do have to have at least one selected. In this case, I'll be using all of them. And then the blend-in option here, this is just going to determine how smoothly the biomes blend together. So if you have it really low, then it could just all of a sudden be from like a snowy area into a volcano. Otherwise, it'll be a more gradual change. And then this will just generate caves, obviously. So if you don't want that, then just uncheck it. And the caves can also be underground caves or under the ocean even. They aren't necessarily going to be just like perfect caves you can explore. Some of them might be even too small to even go into, but... And then here is the biome size. So that'll just determine the size of the different biomes here. So if you make it really small, there's just going to be a bunch of tiny biomes. If you make this number big, like if I make it the size of the whole terrain, the 2048 here, then there will just be one biome. And then the seed, this is just a random number. So if I generate this now, it's going to make the terrain look a certain way. And as long as this number is the same, it's going to generate the exact same terrain every time. But if I change this number, then it'll make something slightly different. It'll still use my settings here, but it'll just make it a different kind of terrain. So I'll go ahead and generate this now and see what it looks like. And this could take a while depending on how big your terrain is and how good your computer is. But now, as you can see, we have like a lake over here and some desert, some grass area, some more lakes and some plains, some more desert over here. You can see there's not much elevation though. So we could either just keep generating it and hope it adds more elevation, or generally, like, the taller the terrain size is here and the Y size, then it'll tend to make it more extreme with the height. So I could also just change that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and just generate this again real quick, the exact same one. And you can see nothing is changing. Everything's looking exactly the same because we have the same seed here. But now if I change this seed, I'll just change it to an 8. You can see we're getting something completely different. And it's just going to overwrite all this pre-existing terrain. So now you can see it looks completely different than what we had just by changing this one number. And this number can just go up like as high as you want. So I could just do a number like that. So it's not going to make it any like crazier, like the bigger number you use or the smaller number. It's just going to be different each time. So now I'll go ahead and play around with the biome settings. I'll change the biome size to 20 in this case. And you can see now there's a lot more different biomes going on. It's just snow and then desert and then just all kinds of different biomes going on together. But then if I make it higher, then there's going to be less of that. Now you can see it's just kind of the same terrain. It's much more smooth. And then if I make it the entire size, then we should only get one biome. So now it's just going to be a plain area. It did still make some water over here though. I'll just change the seed and see what else we get. So now we're getting some kind of volcano area, and it's going to make the whole area look like that. Alright, so now that pretty much covers the generation function. That's how it works. So now looking at the edit option here, this is where you're going to be doing most of your editing of the terrain, getting things just right how you want them to look. Actually, I want to go back here for 1 second because I want to see if we can just get some taller mountains, because you can see it's quite flat still. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the size on the y-axis. Let's just try 250 for now. And I'll move it up. And I'll just go ahead and clear it all just to be sure that it's uniform. And now you can see it took much longer to generate, but we also have higher hills. So if you're not getting too much elevation, then it might just be that your Y size is too small. So now I'm going to go ahead and clear this and generate something new. I want to see if I can get a grass area here. So that is not a grass area, so I'm going to try again. So to make this easier, I can just go ahead and uncheck some of this other stuff that I don't want. And I'll just generate it again, even though it's the same seed. Since I have different settings here, it should be something different. Oh, that's weird. It is giving me the exact same thing. So I'll go ahead and just change the seed to something else then. And in this case, I don't want any caves. Okay, now it looks like we have some grass here. So I wanted to pick the grass because the grass has a special property on it. You can see how these blades of grass are moving like this. So none of the other kind of terrain really has this, except for the water. The water does have some motion to it. So I'll go ahead and add in some water here later. But now moving on to the edit tab. Or actually, yeah, we'll go to the edit tab. And the first thing I want to do is add some water here, just so I can show you some things with the water and the grass. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick the paint option. And I'll pick water. And then I should just be able to paint this grass into water here, just like this. And we can zoom in just to see how deep it is. And that's plenty good enough for now. So with that in mind, now you can see how these have special properties. So the water moves and the grass moves as well. So what we can do with this is, if we go in the terrain options back here, there's a few different options. So the decoration, this will change the grass. So if I don't want the blades of the grass, then I can uncheck that, or if I do want it. The grass length, that's pretty self-explanatory. It just makes the grass longer or shorter. So just like that. The material colors. So this will just change the color of all the various materials within the terrain editor. This won't change them. This won't change them for like parts and things like that. It'll just change it only for the terrain editor. So if I want to change the color of the grass in this case, I can make it darker, brighter, or just an entirely different color. And same thing with the other materials, but if I want to change the water color, then that's just this option right here. So I can make the water darker, brighter, change the color of it. So I'll just keep it like that for now. And then there's some other features here with the water. So this is going to change your reflectance. So the higher reflectance, it's going to reflect the color of the sky. So if the sky is a different color, then that's also going to change kind of the color of the water. And then we can also change the transparency of the water here. But you can see when I change this, nothing actually is looking different. So what you need to do to fix that is go in the studio settings here, and in the rendering tab, change this to whatever you have it at, just change it higher. I'll just set it to the highest in this case. And now you can see when I change it, now it actually is changing it. So I think at 1, it actually looks the most realistic. It's not actually completely transparent, even though it's supposed to be. Maybe if I change the color here. Oh, it could just be because of reflectance, actually. Yeah, so if we change the reflectance down now it looks pretty transparent. But you can still kind of see the light rippling off of it. So something like this actually looks pretty realistic, I would say. And then here you can change the size of the waves. So this would be more for like an ocean. Well, this is a global setting, so you can't just adjust it to like one area. Maybe in the future they'll give us that option, but so you just kind of have to decide. And then here we can just make the waves really small, and then here you can change the speed of it. So something like a river or something might have much faster water, or if it's just a lake, then it might be really slow, or you can make it just completely stagnant. Oh, one other thing you can do with the grass is you can actually change the wind direction, and this will affect the grass as well. So you can see if the wind is really intense, then the grass is going to blow much harder. You can change the direction here. Okay, now looking back at the terrain editor, I'll go back in the edit tab here. So with the select option, you can select different terrain. So in this case, we have the whole thing selected. And then with the transform tool, and now you can see I'm starting to lag probably because of the quality is so high right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just change this back. I'm going to go ahead and just select a much smaller area here. Just like this. I'll just go ahead and select this pond here actually. Okay, now going back over to the transform option. So this is going to let you change the size and position of whatever terrain you've selected. So in this case, I could move this away from here like this, and then we just have a big hole here. I probably wouldn't want to do that in this case, but I could also make this bigger. So if I just stretch it out like this, now you can see we have a much bigger pond here. And then the live edit. So if you uncheck that, it won't apply the changes until you pick apply down here. And then the other stuff, there's other properties here. This is all pretty basic stuff. The merge empty, from my understanding, this will, if you have an empty space selected, so like if I just go up here and select nothing right here, and then I pick the merge empty, now you can see it's okay, so that's why it wasn't working. We didn't have the live edit on. So now you can see it's gonna just overwrite this terrain because we have the empty, we just have empty space here selected, and then we have the merge empty selected. So if we uncheck that, then it's not gonna do anything. Now looking at the next option, the fill tool. This will just let you fill whatever area you selected with a certain terrain. So I'll just drag this back down like this. So if I wanted to make this into mud, for example, instead of grass, then I would just select that and then pick fill. And now you can see it's mud instead. And then you can also just replace a material with another material. So if I wanted to change it back, then I could just select the mud and then select grass. And now it's back to grass, but it is kind of misshapen now. So if I just want to undo all of that, then I can just press Ctrl Z. And now it's going to undo all of it. Or, for example, if I wanted to make this pond frozen instead, then I could just select all of this right here and then pick to replace the water with ice. And now the pond is frozen. Or glacier might look better, actually. You can also replace air. So if I just wanted to replace usually you'd use this just for getting rid of things. So like if I just want to make it the terrain lower here, then I could just fill this with air. And it's the same thing, it's just kind of destroying all that terrain right there. And then you could also just target it to certain materials. So if I only wanted to do the grass, because you can see there's some other materials here, or I could, if I want to just keep this ice here, and then Now you can see it's gotten rid of the grass and it's just kept the ice here. But then under the grass there was a different material, so that's why it didn't destroy all of it, it just got rid of the grass. Now moving on to the next option, sea level. So this will let you make a sea or ocean. So it's just going to make a flat body of water wherever you set this at. So if I just do it right there and then I pick create, okay, that might be too low actually. So I'll just do it right there and generate it, and now we just have a big body of water here. So you could also just do this with the fill tool. If I just fill the air here, with water, now you can see it's basically the same thing, but this way it just makes it a bit easier because these have different selection boxes. So I could have my terrain selected over here that I'm working with over here, and then I could have my sea level that I'm working with over here. So it's just kind of an easier way to make water. So something like that might look pretty good. And then moving on to the draw tool. This is where you can just add a lot of terrain really easily or take it away. So there's two modes here, add and subtract. So the first one obviously will add it, and subtract will take it away. So you can see I can add more terrain just like this, or I can take it away with this button. And then here you can just set the shape of the brush. Usually if you want it natural looking, then you're gonna want the ball shape. And then you can change the size and the pivot position. The pivot position is just gonna determine where the brush is oriented in the world when you're working on it. So if I leave it at center, going back to add here, if I leave it at center, then it's gonna make it like that. But then if I pick bottom, then it's gonna be much higher up. You can see like that. Or if I do the top part, it's gonna be kind of inside the terrain, so it's not gonna be that noticeable. And then here you can change the snap in, so if I want it to snap, otherwise I can just turn that off. And then plane lock, this will just lock it to a kind of plane like this. I'm not too sure how this would be useful, but there must be some use for it. And then you can set a manual plane here, so I could just drag the plane like this. And then, yeah, you don't need to set the size of the plane. It'll just keep going. It'll keep going forever. I'll just leave it off for now. And then there's a few more options down here. Ignore water and ignore parts. So if I go to the subtract brush, and then I select the water here to remove the water material, you can see I can remove it. But then if I check ignore water, then it's not going to remove it. It doesn't really work with the add brush. So if I try and add grass here over the water, you can see I can still add it. So it's really just for removing it. And then the ignore parts option, going back, if I add in a new part here, and just make it bigger like this, and then I'll move it up right here. So this option, I haven't really found how to use it, because what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to not affect the terrain around a part, but it doesn't seem to work properly unless I'm just using it wrong. So you can see if I go to the add brush and try and add some grass here, so you can see I'll do it right over the brush, or right over the part I mean. You can see it still adds it. And the same thing with subtracting. So if I pick subtract and go over that, and then I move the part out of the way, you can see it didn't work at all. It still subtracted that terrain right there. So I'm not too sure what it's for then. It doesn't really seem to work. And then auto material. So this will just base it on whatever material you're going over. So if I check this and then I try and add, it's going to add water here because I have auto material. And then if I pick add right here, it's going to add grass. So that's what that's for. So that pretty much covers the draw option. The draw option would be especially useful if you just need to get rid of a big chunk of terrain, or add a big chunk of terrain like a mountain or something. But now moving on to the sculpt tool. So this is where you're going to be able to more finely polish the terrain and do just more subtle features. It has the same kind of options as the draw tool here. I can either add or subtract, and then I can change the shape and the brush size. But there's a new option here with the strength. So if I pick to subtract right here, you can see it's just very gradually whittling this terrain away. But then if I turn up the strength more, it's going to do it much faster. Or if I turn it down, it's going to do it a lot slower. And you can also add in terrain like this. So now you can see it's just growing new terrain right here. So if I want to make like some hills or some mountains, then I can make it just like this. Or if I want to take some away, and that pretty much covers all the settings in the sculpt option. Now moving on to the smooth tool. So this will just obviously smooth things out more. So you can see if I go over that really hard edge right there, it's just going to smooth it out. And I'll just turn the strength down. So that's pretty much what the smooth tool does. Now looking at the next option, paint. This will just let you paint the surface of the terrain with whatever material you want. So if I want to change this grass into glacier, then I could just paint over it like this. And it's just going to change the surface. So it's, if we went down like here, then we would see it's like still grass or dirt. In fact, we can just check that right now. If I go to sculpt and then I subtract right here, you can see it's still dirt under here. So it's just going to paint the surface of it. You can also paint water as long as you don't have the ignore water option checked. So I could just paint this all with ice. Well, right now it's just doing everything. So if I only want to select the water, then I would just pick replace and then just target the water. Okay, now looking at the last tool here, the flatten tool. So this will just help you flatten the terrain, like if you have a hill or something like this. There's 3 different modes here. So this one, the first one, will lower the hills. This will shrink the hills down and make it equal to the surrounding terrain. The second option will increase the lower part of the terrain. It'll make the lower part grow to the hills. And then this one will do both things, so it'll make the hills and the valleys kind of merge in the middle. Just to help demonstrate this better, I'm going to go ahead and add some new terrain in here. So I'll just pick the draw option and make some bigger terrain here. Alright, then I'll go back to the flatten tool. And I'm going to make it just the size to cover the whole top of the terrain here. So now you can see it's flattening out more. And then if I go over here and try on this one, okay, now you can see it's flattening out much more now. So if it's not flattened that much, then just try and pick a lower area of the terrain. Like if I pick right here, now it's going to flatten it to that spot. Or we could do it on a much larger area, like down here. And now it's going to flatten all of that out. Now looking at the second option. So this should help grow the lower part of the terrain. I'll just make the brush a bit smaller. And now you can see it's growing the terrain right here. So it's going to grow it to whatever height I click at. So if I click all the way up here, it's going to grow it to this height. And then the third option, so this will do both of them. So if I pick up here again, Now you can see you see how it's lower in the top of the hill, but it's also bringing the bottom of the train up. So it's doing both things at once. So that's pretty much the flatten tool. There's also a plane lock here. So you can see if it's on auto, it's just gonna adjust the plane based on where my mouse is at. Or then if I pick fixed position, then it's just always gonna be at the same position. And I guess we can change the position of it here. So that pretty much covers everything with the terrain editor. It's pretty useful if you want a realistic looking world. So I think what I'm going to do is make another video, and I'll just go ahead and make a terrain from scratch and show you the process of how I do it. I'm not like an expert with terrain, but I have used it a few times, so I'm pretty familiar with it. So yeah, look for that video. I'll be making a video showing the whole process of how I can start making some terrain and getting a nice looking landscape.